Well, welcome to the show. This is Nightique. You know, we are archiving the shows at Nightique.com, so many of the shows that we've done over the last few weeks are up there now. We've got Bobby Rush doing a live performance in our studio, and others. Grady Champion was on the other night talking about his recent trip to Europe and how the people in Europe really appreciate the blues, and he is one of the new young blues players and how they're adapting to his version of the blues. And so if you missed that show, you can watch it at Nightique.com. Now tonight we've got State Representative Cecil Brown. He is our first politico here in studio, and we're going to talk about what's coming up this new legislative season, which starts in January, what's on the agenda, and we'll talk about politics in general, Mississippi politics. It's a very intriguing subject. We'll talk about an array of things, get his opinion on a few things, so it'll be exciting to talk to State Representative Cecil Brown. He'll be with us right after these messages.
Since 1849, Carter Jewelers has been a part of Jackson's rich history. Over 163 years later, we've not only survived, Carter Jewelers has flourished. From generation to generation, we've established a tradition of excellence. Our reputation is built on customer satisfaction, service, and trust. Every piece of jewelry is handpicked, so you know you're getting the best value.
Nobody says I do like we do at Carter Jewelers.
Come see us and be part of our history.
Ingalls Shipbuilding is hiring electricians, structural welders, machinists, ship fitters, pipe fitters, and pipe welders in our Pascagoula, Mississippi site. Signing bonuses available for pipe welders only. Positions are union represented. Come build your career with Ingalls Shipbuilding. Go to www.huntingtoningalls.com/careers or call 888-935-1507.
Well, we've got Representative Cecil Brown in the studio with us tonight, and we are happy to see you, sir. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You are our first political person here in the studio with us.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
I really do. Thank you for coming. Well, now, you are a Democrat, right?
That is correct.
Okay, what is the difference between, in the state of Mississippi, what would you say is the difference between Democrats and Republicans?
The major difference is the level of conservatism. Most Democrats consider themselves to be conservative, sort of middle of the road, moderate conservatives. A great number of Republicans would say they're farther to the right on that, and a lot of it revolves around the role of government, how you view the role of government. Most of the Democrats that I associate with think that things like education, public safety, health care, economic development, highway construction, those kinds of things are things that the government needs to take control, not take control of, needs to supervise and work on, and that we should be willing to spend our money for those kinds of things. A number of the Republicans would say no, that we're spending too much money, we need to cut back on government services. So that's probably the dividing line.
In the state of Mississippi, a Democrat would not be considered liberal, he'd be considered somewhat conservative.
Oh yeah, I'd say that virtually all the Democrats I know would, if you took any of our Democrats and put them in another state, they'd be considered conservative. In Mississippi, they're considered on the left side of the aisle.
So do we have any true liberals in state government?
We have some people who claim to be liberal, but when you talk about the individual issues, they're not as liberal as somebody in another state might be. One of the problems you have with labels is like labeling anybody else. The label is sort of a broad brush approach to defining what a person is or how they think, and it's hard to define exactly what a conservative is, exactly what a liberal is. You have a lot of members who are would be considered liberal on education issues, but probably very conservative on some of the social issues like abortion, those kind of things. That's kind of where I am, for example.
So issues that are hot button issues around the country that are, for example, gay marriage and things like this. Is this something that you feel the legislature will address, or do you not think they will be addressing these types of issues in the near future?
I don't think the legislature is going to address it. We have a constitutional provision defining marriage that says marriage is between one woman and one man. We have that in Mississippi. There's been a lawsuit filed, as I understand it, challenging that constitutional provision. My guess would be the legislature is going to let that work its way through the courts. I have not heard anybody in the legislature talk about sponsoring any kind of legislation that would try to change the law in Mississippi to allow gay marriage.
What is your opinion of what you see, what we all see around the country with the laws changing, and there's a general movement that these things are being legislated to allow or to not allow in some cases, but this is happening out there.
It's happening in some states where there's been legislation. There have been some states where there have been constitutional amendments. There have been a number of federal lawsuits on the issue. There have been some state court decisions on the issue, striking down constitutional amendments, striking down laws. So I think my guess would be, certainly from my standpoint, I think we're going to be willing to let it sort of work its way through the courts around the United States and just see where we are. Again, I've not heard any discussion of anybody in the legislature or any state elected official talking about introducing legislation or challenging the current constitutional provision that says it's between one woman and one man.
The idea of the common man out there entering politics today, it seems like a noble profession to be in, to be involved in government, to serve and such, but there seems to be a lot of folks who will not do it because it's such a very rough and tumble game out there, and people would say, you know, I'm not going to subject myself and my family to such an onslaught just to go and serve, even though those might be some great people out there that could serve, but they won't. What is this the situation? Is that your idea also? A lot of people won't serve because of how nasty it is?
I think that's a part of it. I think there are a lot of qualified people, capable people who will not serve because they don't want to go through, as you said, the rough and tumble political side of it. Running for public office can be very long. It can also be very expensive. It can cost a lot of money. All these races now are very, very expensive. And once you get there, if you look at the public offices we have, most people who are who would be considering those kinds of offices would not be paid enough to justify what they'd have to go through to get to the office. State government, even the federal government, typically doesn't pay as much as the private sector for some of these high-paying jobs. So you've got an office like governor, for example. If you take, let's take Governor Barber, for example. I'm sure he made a tremendous financial sacrifice to serve 2 terms as governor. And so it's anybody thinking about it's got to say, well, I've got to give up a year of my life traveling around the state. I've got to subject myself to all the criticism I might get, all the questions I might get. My family's going to be examined. Everything I've ever done will be examined. And so I just don't want to go through all that. Yeah, I know that's a factor.
Yeah. As you mentioned, the politics does not pay a lot of money necessarily, right? You have to do it for some greater idea, I would imagine, right?
That's correct, yeah.
You have to have that in mind. And we've had some notable governors through the last number of years. We were talking before we went on, you were the chief of staff for Governor Mabus.
That's right.
And Governor Mabus was, he was an outstanding governor. I think the general consensus is that he was, correct?
I think he was an outstanding governor. He's an outstanding person. He's a very bright, hardworking, honest, forward-thinking kind of person, and I think he served us well. Unfortunately, he served at a time when the economy was like it was under Governor Barber. It was a very difficult time. We were in a recession, and a lot of things just didn't break his way politically. The same thing happened to Governor Musgrove, and it's happened to other governors. As I was mentioning to you off air, very often a governor or any elected official is subject to things outside their control. And so you run into, particularly the economy. The economy, really a governor has very little impact on the economy, even the state's economy. There's not much they can do other than encourage economic development to make things better on an economic basis. That's a private sector function. And so you wind up with situations where you have a very capable governor who comes into a situation where there's no money to spend and that sort of stuff. The governor gets painted badly because of that and loses re-election. That's happened all over the country.
And now Governor Mabus is the Secretary of the Navy.
That's correct.
Now, what exactly does that job entail? He's in charge of basically, he's the chief executive of the Navy?
He is the chief executive of the non-military side of the Navy. He basically handles all of the money spending, all the procurement, building ships and all that kind of stuff. He does not give orders to the fleet. He does not give orders to the Naval Air Air Cadets, Air Force officers, that kind of stuff. They have a military side that does that, but he's in charge of basically all the budget, all the ordnance, all that kind of stuff, logistical stuff.
And he was a Navy man.
He was a Navy man.
So there you go.
And this has always been his dream job. He's
Has
always
it, was it really?
Yeah, yeah. He talked about when he was serving as governor. He and Bill Clinton were friends, good friends. And when President Clinton got elected, Ray wanted to be Secretary of the Navy then, and instead he went to Ambassador to Saudi Arabia and did a great job over there. But that's what he's always wanted to do, be Secretary of the Navy. And when he came back, and he worked very hard for President Obama in the election, and President Obama appointed him, and he loves it. He absolutely loves it.
That's great. That's great. It's a great honor for Mississippi to have him in that position.
It is a great honor, and we've had a ship named for the city of Jackson. We've had a ship named for the state of Mississippi. That's one of the nice things that he does get to do, is name ships.
And we had a submarine, I believe.
Yeah,
too,
so it's
USS
been great.
Mississippi.
Yeah,
big old nuclear sub. And you know, and also, I mean, the Governor Barber's career as the you know, in the involvement with Reagan, you know, as the head of the Republican Party, and all, you know, all of that. We've had some very interesting governors come out of the state, strong governors.
We've had strong governors. Governor Winter was a wonderful governor. He's a wonderful person. We've had good governors. We've had some that have not worked out so well, particularly back before the civil rights struggle. We had some issues with governors, but I think in recent years we've had.
But that was the whole South, though, wasn't it? I mean, it was Mississippi was in the forefront of, you know, maybe some wrong decisions, but so were a number of other states out of the South, Alabama, Louisiana. You could just look right around.
We sort of led the charge, I think, but that's okay. That's all behind us now. We need to work our way through it. I think we're moving in a good direction now.
Yeah, you know, the perception, I think, I would think of the state is improving, and you know, and will continue to do so. Every now and then they'll make another movie, which is another, you know, maybe not such a flattering story, but it is all, at least in the past.
Yes.
You know,
we still have problems, and nobody should believe we don't have racial problems in the state, but nobody should believe we don't have racial problems in the country or around the world.
That's right.
I mean, I was in a Mission Mississippi event last night, and the head of Mission Mississippi, Nettie Winters, brought that point out very clearly. It's not just in this country. It's not just in this state. We have racial problems around the world, have had them from the beginning of time, and unfortunately probably will always have them. But we can do better than we're doing here in the state.
Well, we're going to be back. We're going to take a short break. So we'll be back with Representative Cecil Brown after these words. Well, we're here with Representative Cecil Brown, and Representative, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
We were talking in general about politics a little earlier. Now, the legislative season is coming up, right, in January?
In January, first Tuesday in January.
So, as a legislator, you're in the House, right?
That's correct.
What is it that what makes up your day during that 3-month period, January, February, and March, when you guys are in session?
It's really different in January than the other months. January is sort of a feeling out period when people file bills, file legislation, prospective legislation. Committees are getting reorganized. There's a lot of administrative things that have to be done in January. The legislature, one thing the legislature does very well is it operates under deadlines. There's some rules we operate that have been adopted by the legislature that say that certain things have to be done by a certain date. And so we work with our staff to make sure we're meeting all those deadlines. For example, if I want to introduce legislation, there's a certain date by which it has to be introduced, and if I don't make that deadline, it can't be considered at all. So the first month or so is dealing with those deadlines, and after that, most of the next 6 weeks or so are dealt with committee work. The legislature is divided up. The House has its own committees, the Senate has its committees, and most of the time from that point on is dealt with committee meetings. And depending on how many committees you're on, you could have 2 meetings a day, or one meeting a day, or 4 or 5 committee meetings during the day. So that's a lot of the first part of it. In the latter part, everything's done on what's called the floor, where you're in joint meeting. The entire legislature, entire House meets, the entire Senate meets, and we consider legislation and vote on it.
The season upcoming, can you tell us some of the bigger issues that you're looking at?
Yeah, I think there are going to be a number of issues. Let's remember first, next year, which is the year we're talking about, 2015, we start meeting in January. We'll meet through the end of March. But next year is also a general election year. So in November of next year, all the members of the legislature will be running. Those who are going to run for election will be running. The governor will be running, lieutenant governor, all those people. During election years, you typically don't get as many controversial issues to be considered because nobody wants to go into an election having dealt with a lot of controversial issues. That's just the political world we live in. But I think a couple of issues that will have to be considered, one of those is, well, the budget's always an issue. I mean, we got a $6 billion general fund budget, a total of about a $16 billion budget, including federal money. And so the budget's always an issue, and there's always debate about how to divide up the money among the various needs in state government. So that'll be an issue, and that usually comes toward the end of the session. The 2 other issues I believe will be toward the forefront. One of those will be Medicaid expansion. It has to do with Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and whether or not the state of Mississippi should do what 27 or 28 other states have done and expand Medicaid to cover the working poor people who don't have health insurance. About 300,000 people in Mississippi would qualify if we expanded Medicaid for additional health insurance who do not currently have health insurance. And most of those people are working jobs. They just can't afford health insurance, and they make too much money for current Medicaid, which is for the very impoverished people, but they would not be able to afford to buy health insurance. The other issue is going to be the whole issue of funding education. For the last several years, that's been a major issue. We have consistently underfunded the Mississippi Adequate Education Formula, which is the basic formula that the legislature itself adopted as the way we go about providing sufficient funds for every kid to have the opportunity for a good education in Mississippi. And we've underfunded that. There'll be a provision on the 2015 general election ballot to amend the state constitution to require that we fund it. And so that whole issue will be debated in the legislature beginning in January.
Okay, the first point you made about health care. Let's talk about Obamacare. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about it. Now, it seems like this is an issue that's divided on party lines. It seems like the Republicans are not in favor and the Democrats are. Simple as that. Now, I'm trying to ask as a layperson, what is so wrong with having health insurance available to all people? I mean, what in the world could possibly be wrong with a concept like that? Who's against it? I mean, why are people against that?
Well, let me go back to a couple of things you said. There are 9 Republican governors who have supported Medicaid expansion, so it's not just a party line issue. 9 Republican governors have pushed expansion of Medicaid. So we've got a number of Republicans on record, and we've got some states with Republican legislatures that have adopted Medicaid expansion. We're one of the Republican-led states who has not adopted it. We've got some Democrats across the country who are opposed to it. The arguments you will hear, there are a couple of basic arguments that you hear from those who are opposed to the expansion. Most of those arguments boil down to money. The way the law was passed, the federal government would have funded 100% of the cost of the expansion for the first 3 years, beginning 2 years ago, and then ratcheting down to 90%. So the most the state of Mississippi would ever have to pay for was about 10% of the cost of the Medicaid expansion. The people who are opposed to it say we can't afford the 10%, and they also say we don't believe the federal government's going to continue to pay for it. We think the federal government's going to change its mind. Well, if the federal government changed, you could make the same argument about our highway funds. I mean, we get all kinds of federal money that we take willingly and we spend, and we don't make the argument, well, we shouldn't take that federal money because they may cut us off in the future. They're only making that argument with regard to Medicaid. These are people, to quote the governor, his opposition is, I don't like Obamacare. That's his opposition. That's what he says. I don't like Obamacare. Why he doesn't like it, I don't know. To me, I mean, there are all kinds of economic arguments about why we ought to take the money. We're giving up $3 million a day that would be coming into this state. $3 million a day to cover 300,000 people who don't have health insurance. 300,000 working people. We're talking about barbers. We're talking about waiters and waitresses, people that work at a hotel. We're talking about small business people who may have a small machine shop who can't afford health insurance. We're talking about newspaper carriers. We're talking about all kinds of people out there who are working, hairdressers, barbers, folks like that, who are working hard to make a living, and they are taxpayers, and yet they don't make enough money to pay $500 to $1,000 a month for health insurance, so they just risk it. And they get sick, and they go to the hospital, and they can't pay, and the hospital has to write that debt off, and guess who pays for that? We pay for that. We pay for that either through our taxes at University Medical Center, where we have to fund that, or we pay for it through increased health insurance premiums in the private sector. That compensation does not go unpaid for. That health care gets paid for. It's just not paid for by the people who get the health care. So the idea under the expansion is everybody will get some kind of health insurance who will pay for the benefits they get. That's the idea for expansion.
Well, you know, in other civilized countries across the Western world, healthcare the person doesn't pay for healthcare. The government, there are programs in place. And when those folks from, let's say, the UK find out about what we're doing, it seems a little barbaric the way we handle it.
Well, yeah, it's a mystery. We started out with a system that was through private health insurance, and we've stuck with that system over the years. And you know, a lot of the people who are arguing against the expansion argue we don't want the government to take over health care. Well, the government's not taking over health care. The government already pays for Medicaid, and the Medicare program is basic. In fact, if you look at Medicaid and Medicare, it's a private delivery system. The government doesn't hire doctors for Medicaid and Medicare. All the doctors, all the hospitals are outside the government. These are not government facilities. These are not government doctors. They are private doctors that are getting paid for by a government health insurance program. But there's a substantial difference in that and what you see in other countries where they actually hire the doctors and own the hospitals and that kind of stuff. Nobody's talking about doing that, or at least that's not what this bill does. This bill says we're going to pay for it, but we're going to use the private sector to provide the services.
Okay, we could talk about that particular subject all night. The question right now is, the final question as we're getting close on time is, you're in the legislature. Do you have plans to continue in the world of politics? Any other aspirations?
I plan to continue in politics. It's my plan now to run for a Central District Public Service Commissioner in the 2015 election, November 2015. And I'm beginning to work on that, try to organize to get out there and talk to people about it. It's 22 counties would be covered, about 1 million people. The Public Service Commission essentially regulates the utilities services that people receive, and so I plan to run for that position.
Well, we'd like to have you on again, and
Thank you.
Give us some insight as we get into the new legislative season into what's going on there behind the scenes in the world of politics in Mississippi.
Be happy to do it. I enjoy talking about this kind of stuff because I think people need to know what's going on, and it's hard to get an insight unless you're right in the middle of it.
Right. Well, it's good to have you here. We'll hope to have you back soon.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you
I appreciate it.
very much.
Sure.
Okay, that's our show for tonight, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow night here on Nightique. Yeah.
Since 1849, Carter Jewelers has been a part of Jackson's rich history. Over 163 years later, we've not only survived, Carter Jewelers has flourished. From generation to generation, we've established a tradition of excellence. Our reputation is built on customer satisfaction, service, and trust. Every piece of jewelry is handpicked, so you know you're getting the best value.
Nobody says I do like we do at Carter Jewelers.
Come see us and be part of our history.
Ingalls Shipbuilding is hiring electricians, structural welders, machinists, ship fitters, pipe fitters, and pipe welders in our Pascagoula, Mississippi site. Signing bonuses available for pipe welders only. Positions are union represented. Come build your career with Ingalls Shipbuilding. Go to www.huntingtoningalls.com/careers or call 888-935-1507.
Well, thanks for being with us tonight, and we'd like to remind you that we have the website up, Nightique.com, and we are archiving our shows there. We've got a number of shows from the last couple of weeks there. Rob J., the new sports director and general manager of WJSU-TV, we did an exclusive interview with him the other day, and it's posted, and we hope that you will look at some of the shows we've been doing. Tell a neighbor or so that we've got a local program that delves into the whole realm of local activities, politics, entertainment, newsmakers and such, and we are every night on at 10 p.m. on JSU TV, which is on Comcast Channel 14, and starting, I believe it's November 3rd, the first Monday in November, we'll also be running at 6:30 p.m. on Comcast 14. So we'll have two shows each night. The live show at 10 o'clock and then the repeat the next day at 6:30 p.m. So a couple of shows to catch daily. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you tomorrow night here on Nightique.